The Grand Hotel lobby buzzed with the quiet hum of conversation and the soft clinking of glasses from the bar. The scent of polished wood and fresh flowers filled the air as a well-dressed hotel manager sat behind the sleek reception desk, tapping away on his laptop. His sharp suit and neatly combed hair gave him an air of authority, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who believed he knew exactly who belonged in his establishment and who didn't. Then the front door swung open, and in walked a tall, older man in a gray hoodie and a black baseball cap. He moved with quiet confidence, his presence commanding attention even though he made no effort to stand out. Approaching the desk, he gave the manager a polite nod. "Good evening," he said. "I need a room." The manager barely looked up, his expression shifting to one of disinterest. He scanned the man from head to toe, then leaned back in his chair. "I'm sorry, sir," he said coolly. "We're fully booked." The man frowned slightly, glancing around at the empty seating areas and the keys still hanging behind the desk. "Really?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. The manager's lips pressed into a thin line. "Yes, and besides," he added, lowering his voice, "we don't usually serve your kind here." A moment of silence hung between them. The man's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes darkened. He let out a slow breath and finally said, "Is that so?" The manager gave a tight nod, clearly wanting the conversation to end. But what he didn't realize was that the man standing before him wasn't just any guest. He was the owner of the hotel, and he wasn't going anywhere. The man let the moment stretch, watching the manager with an expression that was impossible to read. The manager, however, seemed satisfied. He had dealt with situations like this before, people who, in his mind, didn't belong in such an upscale hotel. He was used to making them uncomfortable enough to leave. But this time was different. Instead of walking away, the man placed both hands on the counter and leaned in slightly. "Let me ask you something," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Are you sure about that?" The manager's confidence wavered for just a second, but he quickly masked it. "I don't know what you mean," he said stiffly. "Like I said, we have no rooms available." The man exhaled slowly and gave a small nod, as if deciding something in his mind. He glanced around the lobby, taking in every detail. The polished floors, the crystal chandeliers, the gold-accented decor. He had spent years building this place from the ground up, ensuring it was a reflection of everything he had worked for. He knew every inch of it better than anyone. But the man behind the desk, he had no idea who he was speaking to. Just then, a young bellhop passing by caught sight of the man at the counter and froze mid-step. His eyes widened in recognition, and he immediately rushed forward. "Sir," he blurted, his voice laced with panic and respect. Good to see you. I didn't know you were coming by tonight." The manager's brows knitted together in confusion, glancing between the bellhop and the man in the hoodie. Something wasn't adding up. His grip on his authority, which had felt so solid just moments ago, suddenly felt shaky. The manager's jaw tightened as he looked at the bellhop, who now stood nervously beside the man in the hoodie. There was something in the young employee's face, respect, maybe even fear, that made him suddenly uneasy. The man in the hoodie turned slightly, offering the bellhop a small nod. "Good to see you too," he said. His tone was calm, but there was an edge to it, a quiet authority that wasn't there before. The manager straightened his tie and cleared his throat. You know him?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The bellhop shot a quick, nervous glance at the man, as if unsure what to say. Then, after a beat, he nodded. "Yes, sir," he said carefully. He's important." Something in the way he said it made the manager's stomach twist. He turned back to the man, who was still standing there, watching him with the same unreadable expression. "Important?" The manager forced out a laugh, but it felt weak. "I see." He squared his shoulders, trying to regain control of the situation. "Look, if there's been a misunderstanding, The man held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "A misunderstanding," he repeated slowly. "I walked in here, asked for a room, and you told me you don't help my kind. What exactly do you think was misunderstood? Because the name on the card wasn't just any name, it was the name of the owner, the man he had just turned away. The manager's fingers trembled slightly as he turned the card over, as if hoping it would reveal something different the second time. But the name was still there, clear as day, embossed in gold letters that suddenly carried the weight of his entire career. His mouth felt dry, and for the first time that night, he was at a complete loss for words. The man in the hoodie didn't move. He simply watched, waiting. His expression was calm, but his presence filled the space with an unshakable authority. The bellhop, standing to the side, looked anywhere but at the manager, his face tight with discomfort. Seconds stretched into what felt like hours. The manager licked his lips, forcing himself to speak. I didn't realize," he stammered. "Sir, I had no idea." The man raised an eyebrow. "No idea?" he echoed. "No idea who I was, or no idea what you were saying when you turned me away?" The manager's face burned with embarrassment. He could feel the weight of the bellhop's stare, the way the room suddenly seemed smaller. He had made a mistake, a huge mistake, and now he was trapped in it, with no way to take back the words he had so carelessly spoken. "I truly apologize," he said quickly, his voice desperate now. "This was a misunderstanding. A terrible mistake." The man didn't blink. He leaned in slightly, his voice still measured, but with an edge of steel beneath it. "Tell me something," he said. "If I hadn't pulled out that card, if I had been just another guest, would you have treated me any differently?" The question cut through the air like a blade. The manager opened his mouth, but no words came out, because deep down, they both already knew the answer. The manager's throat tightened as the weight of the question settled over him. He wanted to deny it, to insist that things would have been different, but the truth was written all over his face. The man in the hoodie saw it. The bellhop saw it. And worst of all, he felt it himself. Before he could stammer out another excuse, the quiet hum of the lobby was broken by the sharp sound of heels clicking against the marble floor. A woman in a sleek black dress, her hair pulled into a neat bun, approached the front desk with quick, purposeful steps. Her badge gleamed under the warm lights, General Manager. Her eyes darted between the older man, the bellhop, and finally the hotel manager, whose face had turned an alarming shade of red. She had clearly picked up on the tension before she even arrived. "What's going on here?" she asked, her tone professional but firm. The manager opened his mouth, but the man in the hoodie spoke first. "I was just asking your employee here a simple question," he said, his voice smooth but laced with something cold. "Would he have treated me differently if he didn't know I owned this hotel?" The woman blinked, her sharp eyes flickering to the manager, who suddenly looked as though he wanted to disappear. Then slowly she turned back to the man in the hoodie. "Sir," she said carefully, "I sincerely apologize if there was any miscommunication, if there's anything we can do to make this right." The man held up a hand, silencing her. "I don't want apologies," he said. "I want to know how often this happens when I'm not around." A tense silence fell over the group. The bellhop shifted uncomfortably, looking down at his shoes. The manager swallowed hard, and then, in a voice barely above a whisper, the bellhop said, "More often than you think." The woman's expression froze. The manager's head snapped toward the bellhop in shock, but the young man didn't back down. The owner's face remained unreadable, but his fingers tapped lightly against the counter, slow, deliberate. "Is that so?" he murmured. The general manager exhaled sharply, her professional mask slipping for the first time. She knew this was no longer just about one bad interaction. This was bigger, and the man standing before them was about to uncover just how deep the problem really went. A heavy silence filled the lobby. The bellhop's words lingered in the air, undeniable and impossible to ignore. The manager stood frozen, his face pale, while the general manager shifted uncomfortably, realizing this had escalated beyond just one incident. The owner remained quiet for a long moment, his gaze scanning the room, as if seeing everything in a new light.